Welcome to the formal introduction. I gotta change the page too. Here we go. Welcome to the formal introduction. If you didn't already know, my name is Jared, but on YouTube and other various outlets, I am known as the Jareeve, or simply Jareeve. Tonight, I am sharing a piece of my odd, aloof, yet creative, in a way, childhood that will hopefully live on in all of your hearts. It's a work of fiction that has action, adventure, culture, lore, family, love, romance, betrayal, and of course, terrible writing. If all that sounded pretty exciting just now, that's because that sentence is more interesting and exciting than the actual piece. For those of you who are not sure or don't know what I'm talking about, which you probably all do, it's fan fiction. Lord of the Rings fan fiction. Before I start my reading at 9, my time, Eastern Time, I will discuss the history, background, and the characters for this epic. This will hopefully give some people time to tune into the stream and also shed some light on why I wrote this, when I wrote this, how I wrote this, and what the heck is happening. Hopefully the final bit with the characters will help, because they are not developed well or at all. I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at this. And before I start, thank you for all tuning in. Yes, it does mean a lot to me, and you get to watch me embarrass myself and also my 12 or 13-year-old self, depending on what sections of the book were at certain points of my life. So, first up is the history and background to my fanfiction series. Yes, this is a series. There are 4 books. So here we go. We get to go into the history, so we're starting really young. Around the time I was probably 8 years old, I noticed I had a knack for writing. Now, that isn't to say I was great or even good. And I was by no means a child prodigy. I was anything but that. But I just found that creating stories and worlds to immerse myself in were more interesting to me than reality. That's most people, I guess, at some point. I was never bad at school. Never. And I always did well, but I had issues paying attention, and I would frequently daydream during class and miss essential information. I recall coming home many times and not being able to remember what big announcement or next field trip or even what the homework was for that day. It came down to me just not being interested in most of what I was taught. I liked stuff in certain classes, but, you know, you'd rather be somewhere else. And I'll move on. I won't tell that story. I don't think we have time. I did find I had fairly good memorization skills and found myself, I loved looking at maps, and I ended up memorizing state capitals. I can proudly say in the 3rd grade, I could tell you every state capital, including Puerto Rico, that's San Juan, and I can still do it now, of course, but I just remember being in 3rd grade, and that's what I like to do. I like to memorize maps and look at where countries and states and cities, the whole layout of a map. Now, I read a lot back in the day. I don't really read now as much. I still enjoy it, but I really enjoyed it back then. Now, the thing I really liked reading back then were sports books, little novellas written by Matt Christopher, which were probably 80 to 200 pages long. So, the reason I liked these is they were shorter, and they were simple, and I liked the sports aspect. I'm a huge sports fan. So it's kids playing sports. There's one about a diabetic kid who he just recently gets diagnosed or whatever, finds out he has diabetes and tries to play basketball. Or there's a kid that hurt himself and had to change to left-handed swinging from right-handed. It's simple. It's simple storytelling. It's short, and it's just nice to read. It always ended well. When it comes down to a win or lose, but at the end you were happy. It was just a happy little series. He wrote a ton of them. They're pretty old, too. I don't know when he started or stopped, but I remember being drawn to one particular story. There's one story that he wrote, and I can't tell you the name of it. It was about a kid being a tight end on a football team, And I loved the idea of this lineman that could go out and catch passes. And that's how I saw myself, as I thought I had fairly decent catching ability on the playground for playing football. So the thought of this chubby guy catching passes was great. They're not chubby, but that's what I thought. Because, it's basically a lineman that catches passes. So I even tried signing up for that when I did the official sign-up in 7th grade for 78er football. I got put at tackle, if you're wondering. I never got to touch the ball. Never. I wasn't very good, but it was those small sports stories, so why I'm talking about this, that encouraged me to start writing. Because I thought, hey, I'm going to start writing my own sports books. And I wrote a few down. I don't know if I finished them. They're probably 20 to 40 pages. They're somewhere in there. I'd sit down, I'd start writing, and I like packing in the information on the teams and put standings in there. That's what Matt Christopher used to always do. So, but once we got in school, once we started talking more about American history, specifically, that's when you had me. That's when I'd sit down and listen. And so then you're starting to see how this all came together. I developed this love for writing. I really loved history and geography. And in school, that's my favorite part of the day, is getting to learn about the history of the country. Like that's what had me. And by 5th grade, or was it 5th grade? It's about 5th grade, 6th grade when I started writing these. And I could not think of anything more fun back in the day than sitting down at a computer writing stories. So here we go at the big turning point. In the summer of 2005, before 5th grade started, yes, I'm that old, my dad and I sat down to watch Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy. My dad had read the books many times and absolutely loved the movies. They had waited a year or two for me to be mature enough to handle them, and I handled them just fine. Excuse me. Right away, I loved it. Everything about Tolkien's world was interesting. As I said before, the process of world building, and including history and geography and culture and his own languages, it was just so cool. And I went back to those films many a time, and I can even quote large sections of the films from memory to this day. I still can do some. This was also around the time I made a good friend with a kid that lived down the road. I just met him a few months before in passing, but after a few more times hanging out, he became quite a good friend. We hung out a lot and exhausted our options for movies and video games just in the first month of summer. This is how much we hung out that summer, before jobs and everything else gets in the way. You're hanging out every day, and we had already gotten bored. That's just how much stuff we did. So looking for something new for the summer, I mentioned that I loved Lord of the Rings, and he did too. So we decided to make up our own Lord of the Rings stories and act them out ourselves, using the woods and the fields behind my house as the backdrop. And no, we didn't film them because, of course, it would look pretty stupid. We talked about this at that time. We did not want to film this because we know how cheap and low budget. If we wanted to make this film, we'd have no quality because we don't have a camera. We don't have a good camera. We're not good actors. We don't have special effects and extras and costumes. We don't have any of that. So why are we going to film it? It's going to look terrible. So using our imagination, this is the way we brought this to life, because it was almost like an interactive TV series where we're our own audience. We just act out day after day, and of course they're rip-off stories. Of course they're repetitive, but they were fun, and you get to make up your character and change the name, and not change the name, change your backstory, make up your own name. It was just great. So and at the start it was just the two of us. There were just two of us doing this. And we were using whatever blunt object we could find for weapons. But then we ended up including the neighbor kids. There's two of them. There's a girl and a boy. They're both younger than us. And they ended up joining in. And that's where we started over. And that's where the series starts. When we started over, that is where we said, hey, this is where we're restarting the story. It's all going forward from here. Nothing else has happened yet. And that's where the books start. So we acted all these out from about 2005 to 2006, somewhere in there. In the middle of this, it's when I started writing these down. About 2006, I'd say, is when I started. And at this point, I wanted to be an author. Before I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be an author. And I still like writing. I still want to write for film one day. But at this point, this is like, I wanted to write books. This is what I wanted to do. And I thought that what I was writing here was actually good. I spent so much time at that computer typing. You're going to hear dogs barking. A fantasy series just sounded so much fun to do, too. It was just something that was enjoyable. And And I got to the first book right away, finished that fast, the second book right away, because we had acted out both of those. But by the time I got to the third book, we hadn't done any of that. None of it. We had not acted out any of this, so I made this up. The second half of the series, I made up as I went. And there's a clear lack of story and story arc and all that stuff when you get there. So I stopped writing. I stopped writing about 2008. I had gone through and edited once or twice each of the books, and I even started a third edit on the first book, finished that, and then I decided to rewrite all of them and expand them, because the original one that I'm reading as the third edit is 44 pages, but it had already reached like 30 pages halfway through for the new one. So that's what we're looking at. And in 2015, this is way later, I dropped these, just stuff gets in the way, school, job, college. I've just graduated from college, so it's like I'm looking through all this old stuff. But in 2015, the computer in the basement that I used to write all these down stopped working. The monitor would not hook up, no matter what I did. And that's what had all the stories on. And it just sat there in the corner for a long time, just unused. And I went away to school for a year or two on campus, so I wasn't really home to use it. It sat there. But this past December, 2016, I thought I'd try hooking it up again to a new monitor. And I'd tried this new monitor before, but it had not worked. But for some reason, this time, when I plugged everything in, turned it on, it connected. And I went through all those old PC games. I used to play a lot of Age of Empires and EA Sports games, so looking at all those old files and just laughing at how it had been like 10 years since some of them had been altered. So that was cool. But for some reason, I never went through and looked at the files. I never went through and looked at all the stories. And the reason was, I just didn't remember that I had them in there. I probably had some thought in my head like, oh yeah, there's stuff in there. But one day when going through the files, I found them, and I read one page, and I lost it. It was so bad. After reading a few pages to Maggie Boy, when he was up here, he said I had to stream it. I had to bring this to the world. So that is what I'm doing right now. If the story's altered a little bit, Maggie, I'm sorry, but that's what I got from it. So, oh man. I jumped around on this, so I'm going to find my spot. So I'm going to do the third edit of the book. This isn't the segue, by the way. This just by the way, the third edit of the book, because it's the easiest one to follow. The first one is so bad, you would not follow it if I read it loud. So that's the one we'll be doing. If you're wondering about the author name, it's a Jage M on the front. Jage and then M. Jage, someone told me back in like first or second grade that was a nickname for people whose names had like a J sound. I don't know where that logic comes from. But when they told me that, I thought that sounded pretty darn cool. So I used that. And of course, M is my middle initial. We'll get to that in a second. So Jage M is my pseudonym, my pen name. That is what I'd put on all my books. And does it sound stupid? Probably, but what are you going to do? You're 12. You don't want people to know you're writing little fantasy books. So that's the background and history. That is basically it. This comes from an acted out thing we did. So I will briefly explain the characters. Now the reason I'm going to is because you're not going to remember who's talking or who's who, because they're that bad. Now, I'm going to try with the slides too. I think I have the spellings and names. The first character, I believe, is Mathiyus, spelled Mathiyus. There you go, right on the screen you see it. That is how the main character's name is spelled. That is the name of the character from The Scorpion King, which starred Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. My friend that was part of this loved that movie, and he wanted that to be his character name. Little did he know, that is my middle name. Not spelled like that, but that is my middle name. He would not believe me when I first told him. I had to find like a birth certificate to prove it to him, but he finally understood, because the other way to spell it is Matthias. I believe it's like that. That is how you spell my middle name. And that is actually another character in the book that is a minor character. I will refer to him as something like the King or something. There's a spoiler, but just to distinguish, on the page you can tell them apart. Out loud you can't. So from there, he's the only thing about his character you need to know. He's the main character. He's heroic. He's rough and tough. No nonsense. That's all you need. He's kind of a jerk. I think that was the point. I'm just saying that's the character. So does it go back? Yep, and there's how his name is spelled. So my character's name, I hope I put it in the right order. Yes, that is my character's name. I played Tyson, a secondary main character. Now, I liked this name a lot. I don't know why. I had no idea it was a chicken factory, whatever you want to call it. But I was the comic relief. I cracked the jokes. And although I had my own emotional moments, that is what my purpose was. I cracked the joke. Someone gets their head chopped off, I crack a joke. That is how it worked. There's no head chopped off jokes in the series, but that would have been pretty funny. So just be prepared for some really cringy 12-year-old humor. Okay, so the character, the girl next door, played Isabella. I don't know why she picked that name. It fits more with Middle-earth than any of the others, so I guess give her credit for that. She's the female character, and we'll get into the relations. She's related to the main character. So that's basically, like I said, there's not much character to any of them. So that is Isabella. Yep, that's her. So this is my brother in this series. He played an elf named John. Jon, as you see. You have no idea how many times I wanted him to change that stupid name, and he said no. So to compromise, and John is just like another secondary main character. He's not related to anyone in this book. Yes, he has more relatives, but his last name I made up on the spot for the book, and we agreed it was his last name because he got to choose the first name, and I believe it was Monic. It could be Monique. I don't know why, but Monic. Monarch, I guess, is the root. So I think he wanted to be a hobbit too, and I said no. No, he was really short. I guess that's why he wanted to be a hobbit. But if you're wondering about their surname, the other three, it is Tate. If this is the right one, yes, T-A-T-E. Isn't that the most Middle-earth thing you've ever seen? Now, we chose it because it was short, it was easy to spell, easy to say. That is the only reason. I don't know why. If you're wondering, Mathiyus is the main character. His sister is Isabella, and their cousin is Tyson. So Isabella, Mathiyus are siblings. Tyson is their cousin, first cousin. So that's how that works. Now, if you're wondering about the story, I'm not going to spoil too much about the story, but it's basically the plot of Lord of the Rings. Change the characters, change the things characters do and the way characters interact. Change all that. That is basically what you got. So that's basically the first book. The second book, I ripped off The Incredibles because that is the most Middle-earth thing, right? It was called Curse of the Underminer, which is the video game for The Incredibles as well, I think. The Underminer was changed to Underworld King in a later edit, but it's still not very good. They go to defeat him. There's pirates in it. Don't ask. That's the second book. Third book and fourth book, it's weird. It's like a 1 and 2-parter because the third book feels like the first half of the fourth book. So all those movies that do the part 1, part 2 of the final chapter, I did it first. And it's not very good still. It's pretty terrible. So if you're wondering about the pacing of the story too, I'm going to jump into the pacing because they jump all over the place. I think there's a love scene that is 4 lines long. Yes, there's love scenes. Get ready for that. It's not anything explicit. Just the what a 12-year-old would think of as the balcony emotional scene, whatever. I don't know. They'll jump in one sentence. They'll jump 50 miles, or something like that. It's pretty bad. So I knew, and what I'm trying to get to is I was getting to the point. The whole thing I was doing with this, I'm just trying to get to the point. That's all I was trying to do. Get to the point. I saw this in my head as a movie. So as I read this, it's not going to make a lot of sense other than it's like, oh, this looks like a storyboard for a really, really bad 12-year-old homemade movie. That's what it is. I didn't write it as a book. That's one of the things that kind of triggered this love of film, because it was much simpler to write. Not saying I want to be lazy about it, but there's something, I was more visual when it came to writing this, so I guess that's why it's so poorly written. There's not a lot of development, there's not a lot of depth, there's not that much detail, because I just don't like going into a ton of detail at the time, and still don't like going into a ton of detail, and that's what you get in this book. You get a lot of time jumps, no character development, barely anything is explained. People will repeat things. There are some things that are similar to The Room where they'll just repeat the same conversation 8 times. So get ready for that. So, yeah, as I mentioned, the reason I'm reading this is, and I realized this the other day, it's this writing that spawned my love for film. I don't think I would have gone into film if it wasn't for writing some of these stories and realizing that I wanted to be that visual storyteller. I like telling stories, and I like reading these stories. They're terrible, but they show the development of how far I've come in 10 years, and it's just really interesting to see how these books changed the way I wrote too, because I wrote all this down, I finished it, and looking back it's like, how could I be that bad? And then you realize, no, you're starting to see this visual thing going on with how I'm writing things down, and I guess that's why I like film so much. So, and I'm starting to get a little repetitive, but we are starting to close it on 9 o'clock. So I'm right at the end of the introduction. I think 6 people watching. That's good. I'm going to take a swig of the dew. Because during a chapter, I don't want to do that. So there are, I think, 12 chapters? Something like that. Let me see what the next slide is really quick. Okay, back to the introduction. So we'll clear that. I'm going to discard the introduction after I read the last page. And I have right here, I'm going to take out, and here we go. I'm going to set this aside. And there's my finger for, whatever you want to call it, the size thingy. That is how thick this is. There is, like a thing I did with all my books. I'd always put the title, you know, who it's by. I do the content page, and at the end I had other books, Elven word translations. I made up my own Elvish, which is just take the last letter of the word and put it at the front. If it's female, add a Q at the end. If it's male, add an X. Makes no sense. Pronunciations of names, just because I wanted to extend it. There's the first page, so I'm going to set this down right here. Closing in on 9 o'clock. Here we go. Pretty soon. Again, I want to thank all of you for coming out to watch this stream and for tuning in. I've spent the last few weeks setting this up. It took a little bit to set up this nice, I think it's pretty nice setup here with the Lord of the Rings stuff behind me. And I understand if you can't stay the whole time. I'd love it if you could stay through the whole reading. But if you can't, you know, it's okay. I'll cry later. And afterward, if there's still time, I might do a little chat, might do a little Q&A. I don't know. It matters how long this thing is going to take. So persevere, stick around to the end. We'll see how this goes. And we're right at 9 o'clock. I'm going to make sure nothing else is going to disrupt this stream. Got to make sure the musical, I have a little music interlude to play. I'm going to set the introduction aside. Going to set page 1 there. And so, starting at about 9 o'clock now, I hope this music doesn't hurt your ears. This is the 3rd edit of the first book in the series. This is The Lord of the Rings, The Next Generation, Book 1. Whew. So the opening is called Prequel. I meant prologue, but it's called the Prequel, and here we go. Fan fiction time. Next Generation, Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Prequel. A boy, 7 years old to be exact, ran into his father's lap. He waited for his father's story like any other day. The story usually took about 15 minutes, but Mathiyus always listened and understood his father's sayings. In old Middle-earth, I was a youngster just like you. The evil Lord Sauron forged his second ring of power and threatened this facility of Middle-earth. Mathiyus stood open-eyed. Then out of a old village in northern Arnor came a farmer boy named Mathiyus with 2 T's. Uncle! Interrupted Mathiyus. Yes. He came with some friends. Zeke of Mirkwood, Gwendolyn of Rohan. Auntie! Mathiyus shouted again. Yes, now listen. Also, Hiltile the dwarf, Typhon of Gondor, and... forgive me. Toto Baggins of the Shire. Together they destroyed the ring, and Mathiyus fell deeply in love with Gwendolyn. They 3, wed on the first day of summer. Ew! Mathiyus slammed his eyes shut. When the story was over, Mathiyus ran to his bedroom. He played with his wooden sword and pretended to be his mite uncle Mathiyus the First, guarding Minas Tirith with the blade of Aragorn, son of Arathor. His wool hat swung off his head when he hopped onto his dad. Whoa! Looks like a warrior got away from his castle. He put Mathiyus in bed. This warrior needs to be well rested or Minas Tirith might fall. Okay, Daddy. Mathiyus the First laughed. His dad is Mathiyus the First as well as his uncle. It's confusing. Isabella's already asleep. You need your sleep too. Get ready for this 9-year-old dialogue that's apparently a 2-year-old. Why does it matter when Bella's asleep? Mathiyus looked up at his father. Because she's just about your age, only a couple years younger. She's 5. I'm 7, Dad. I'm old enough. You can't even pronounce matter. He laughed hoarsely. I can too pronounce matter. Mathiyus shouted back. I know. She might be 5, but you're 7 and you need sleep. Okay. And with that, Mathiyus fell asleep. His father laughed quietly. He laughed like, In the morning, Mathiyus got out of bed and ran to his sister and mother at the table, wooden sword at side. Why does Matt get big seat? Asked 5-year-old Isabella. Because he's a big boy and he gets it, said her mother. Mathiyus smiled. Sorry. Matt, Bella, said their father. Tyson's coming. Ty bad, said Isabella. He's only 3. He doesn't know any better, answered their mother. That's what you say every time, said Mathiyus. His mother turned at him. Well, it'll be different this time. Hopefully, Mathiyus groaned. His mother looked sharp at him. Sorry. Then, in came the 3-year-old Tyson Tate. He was their cousin, as if we didn't know, and enjoyed pranks and getting into mischief. Like any other 3-year-old boy. Hi! Ty, you be good, yelled Isabella. Time lapse. The sun was shone bright, and warm rays stung the cool air morning. That's the best line in the whole book. Mathiyus, Isabella, and Tyson all jumped outside after breakfast and ran into the meadow. Isabella skipped and picked up flowers and stuffing its petals in her face. Mathiyus and Tyson usually had a race among the milkweeds. Ready, Ty? Mathiyus stretched his shoulders. Set. Go! Shouted Mathiyus. Both boys blasted from the starting line and chewed up milkweed and ferns as they went. Mathiyus was beating Tyson and getting a full foot ahead. A full foot. Tyson quickly grabbed his slingshot and shot a walnut at Mathiyus' ankle. Pain shot into Mathiyus' leg and he fell into a pile of dandelions. Ha ha! Cheater! Mathiyus got up and grabbed his toddler cousin by the neck. Stop! Tyson just released the words. Mathiyus hardened his grip and Tyson was getting strangled. Get ready for his middle name. The most Middle-earth name you've ever heard. Mathiyus Graham Tate the Second. Mathiyus turned to see his mother coming out, and she didn't look happy. You put Tyson down. Mathiyus dropped his nearly strangled cousin to the meadow grass. Don't you do that again. And she brought Mathiyus inside. Time lapse. Get ready for this scene. It's short. That night, Tyson was sleeping over. He crept into Isabella's room with a smile, a garter snake in his left hand. He pulled up Isabella's covers, tossed the snake, and ran out of the room. Snake in my bed! Isabella squealed. I'm not going to squeal. It's too much on the throat. Tyson stood out the door laughing. I don't know why he doesn't run away. Did I lose the rest of it? Oh no, it is right here. Why did I set the page down? Thought I lost it for a second. Mathiyus was just getting his bedtime cloaks on when his father entered. Son, can we talk? Sure, Daddy. His hand poked through the sleeve. Mathiyus' dad sat down. I have something to say. I didn't do it. Tyson did, he yelled. I'm sure he did, his father winked. But I have an important mission. Mission! Squeaked Mathiyus. Shh, he motioned. Mathiyus nodded, closing his pie hole. I've told you about evil Lord Sauron and his orcs. Yeah. Well, I need you to do something for me. And he handed him a small object. I wonder what it is. It was a golden ring. This is Sauron's ring. He forged it before his fall 29 years ago. He made it so he would return to Middle-earth and take it under darkness. It is your task to bring it. I'm too old. He's like 30. When you're old enough, destroy it in the fires of Mount Doom. Scout's honor? Scout's honor. Mathiyus saluted, not knowing what he was getting himself into. It was their way of promising. That is in the book, actually, too. When you are around the age of 28, specific, set out and destroy it. Okay, Daddy. And with that, Mathiyus went to sleep. His father walked out and looked back in. Mathiyus was sleeping, holding the ring in his grip. Yeah, give it to a 7-year-old. I hope he'll be all right, he thought. His quest will begin later. You can't do this to me! Shouted 20-year-old Mathiyus Tate. I forgot this is chapter 1 murderer. He was in the small town of Seville. There, the townspeople shouted and cheered, for he was about to be hanged. Mathiyus had been what people said, a thief and murderer. His neck was getting sore as he had a rope tied around his head. Thousands of thoughts waved through his head. All were forgotten as the mayor spoke. Attention, everyone! He is the man who murdered the one and only Philip the Great. Today, this man shall be hanged. Mathiyus looked as the mayor left the stage. The rope tightened, and all was lost for our friend. He was just thinking of his short life over and over. Then a cry was heard, and a sword was drawn. Mathiyus watched the guards draw their swords. He saw a shadow man with a sword. The figure was coated and its face in blackness. He killed 2 guards before throwing a tiny dagger at Mathiyus. Mathiyus closed his eyes, but then noticed his neck was loose. The stranger had cut his rope. Mathiyus pulled the dagger from the post and killed the executioner standing in front of him. He grabbed his sword on the stage ground and put the dagger in his pocket. Mathiyus lunged at the upcoming guards and killed one, leaving the other one to fall wounded. He stole the mayor's horse and galloped away from the scene. Next to Mathiyus was the figure whose mouth was uncovered, but smiling. The two rode off into the sunset. And that's the end. I keep bumping this. When they were both out of the Seville area, they and Gwendolyn Forrest. It was named after the great Queen Gwendolyn, the wife of Mathiyus, with 2 T's, the first. Mathiyus with 1 T, and the figure made camp by a willow tree. The figure barely spoke, and when he talked it sounded deep and very bold, almost fake. "Gather some wood," said the figure, "and make it quick, before dusk, please." Sorry. Mathiyus quickly gathered wood and started the flames. They were very hot, but warm, the two. They fell asleep around midnight. Morning came, and Mathiyus woke up to see the mysterious person was gone. He rose alarmed and a little bit frightened. Sure enough, the figure was gone. "What's going on?" Mathiyus looked around the camp. This is in his head. "What happened? How did I escape Seville? Who is this figure? Why did they want me?" Mathiyus gathered up his belongings, looking around every once in a while. He then started his hike. He had a secret that no one knew. He had the ring that was forged by Sauron himself. It was Sauron's 3rd ring. He always kept it in his pocket, never to take it out or evil will sense it and he will be done for. He moved his hand into his pocket. Nothing! He searched his whole bag and found nothing. The ring was gone! That figure was real! He's taken the ring, he thought. The long journey was not peaceful. For instance, he had his whole mind on one thing, the mysterious figure. This figure had the ring and he didn't know where to trace him. He settled down and took some deep breaths. He thought tomorrow was another day. It's the end of the chapter. Sorry. Chapter 2. The Figure's Secret. Mathiyus was already in Rivendell area when he saw a shadow. He moved quickly in pace. The shadow moved closer and closer with a dagger drawn in his hand. The figure hid beneath the shadows, and Mathiyus knew this figure was going to massacre him. Then, with all his might, the warrior sprang at the figure behind him. The figure was surprised, and was wrestled to the hard rocky ground with his dagger being thrown 3 feet away. The hood over its head flipped off. Sorry, I read that wrong. The hood over its head flipped of and revealed the true person. Isabella? Mathiyus recognized Isabella's black hair and dim freckles anywhere. "So you have seen." "Wait a minute. Who are you?" "It's me," Mathiyus began. "Get ready for this." "Mr. Morton, what's my math teacher doing here?" "Forgive me." "No, only you're much of a stutter." "A stutter? What in the name of Rivendell is math?" "Mathiyus," she said. "Finally," he said through his teeth. "I mean, yes." "Wow, you're alive, and I'm gonna kill ya!" The next moment was too embarrassing for Mathiyus. For instance, his younger sister was beating him up. She had tackled him and started to tie him to a tree. "Don't get any ideas," Isabella roared. "What did I do?" "Oh, besides leaving the family, stealing, lying, cheating." All right, I get it," shouted Mathiyus. "Sorry." "All right, I get it." There's a shout. "And what did you do to—" "Don't say his name in front of me," said Mathiyus. "Oh, you mean tie—" "I told you, tie. Shut up!" "What does it stand for?" "I don't remember." "Yes, you do," Isabella roared. "I'm mixed up." "Tyson!" Why did he have to be so annoying? "That I will never know," responded Isabella. "But you still nearly strangled him." I had a good reason, Mathiyus huffed. No, you didn't. He was 3. Didn't he throw a garter snake at you? No, he tossed it into my bed. Oh, that brute. What's that sound? Said Mathiyus. Snap. There it was again. Mathiyus and Isabella looked at tree after tree. Nothing. Mathiyus turned back to Isabella. Okay. Mathiyus, why did you kill Mom and Dad? Gee, I'd love to tell you, but I'm kinda tied to a tree. Mathiyus, why? Isabella spoke harsh. Oh, she spoke harsh. Mathiyus, why? Untie me. Okay, I'll do it if you tell me. After Isabella untied Mathiyus, he sat down and chewed deer jerky. Before we start, I want my ring back. Mathiyus ripped off more jerky. We made a deal, Isabella shouted angrily. Actually, I made it sound like a deal. I never said deal or shook hands. He smiled. You little... Isabella drew her sword off her back and rammed it by Mathiyus. Mathiyus dropped his jerky and dove away from the swing. Isabella and Mathiyus locked blades time and time again. Mathiyus hit Isabella's sword and curved around it. He hit the sword away and pushed her. While she backed away, a golden speck fell out of her pocket. My ring! Mathiyus picked up the gem. You stole it! That's right. Father always thought you were the best. His favorite. Then why do you think I killed him? Mathiyus huffed. Isabella was silent, and a tear rolled down her cheek. Mathiyus sighed. When Dad started going hard on me, I was struck with anger and revenge. Then one night, while Dad was eating a late-night snack, I pulled out my sword and killed him. Mom was next. I then realized what I had done. I figured out I was a murderer. I left everyone and didn't show my face to this family again. Mathiyus was silent. The sound was heard again. Snap. I can't snap. What was it? Mathiyus and Isabella looked around to see what it was. Then suddenly saw a figure moving in the field. Mathiyus acted quickly. He charged at the figure and tackled it before it even saw him. The person was wearing a mask that covered his whole face plus arched over his mouth. Phantom of the Opera. There was a nose shape and 2 eye holes. The figure was startled and tried to scamper away. Who are you? Shouted Mathiyus. Oh, get ready for some Elvish. It's Herb! I can't tell you. It's not your business, the person shouted. The voice sounded like a boy's voice. What is your name? Okay, it's Tyson Tate. Nosti. That's Elvish. Nosti. No sight. No sight. Said Mathiyus, ripping off his mask. Yep, it's him. Tyson had brown hair and sharp ears. And that's all you're ever going to hear what he looks like, I think. How do you know it's Tyson? Said Isabella. Everyone in our family has a birthmark on their face above the right eyebrow. Mathiyus pointed. Yeah. Who are you? Said Tyson. Mathiyus Tate, and this is Isabella Tate. Your cousins, answered Mathiyus. Mathiyus? Isabella? You people are messed up. Trying to trick me. Ha! We are telling the truth, shouted Mathiyus, grabbing Tyson's throat again. Okay. Where have you two been? Said Tyson. Mathiyus told the whole story. That's what happened. Why? Isabella started to cry. Why did you kill our father and mother? Mathiyus's face changed expression. He looked down and didn't look up. I don't know about you, but I'm getting water, said Tyson. Over there. Tyson, shouted Mathiyus. Yes. You're not really going to get water. You're going to run screaming your head off to some kingdom and get killed. We'll be discovered, and it'll be the end. Yeah. Mathiyus landed a nice slap. Good enough. Over Tyson's skull as Isabella laughed. Time change, whatever you want to call it. The time lapse. Cranberry bread and cheese slices were served. Tyson reached for more, but Mathiyus' sword stopped him. I think he just slapped him. Isabella was holding her bread like it didn't exist. She kept on staring at Mathiyus. Mathiyus watched as Tyson went to sleep. Isabella instead got up quietly and picked up a sword. It was Queen Gwendolyn's own sword she used against orc armies. She crept like a mouse and raised the blade at Mathiyus. Mathiyus's blonde hair drooped over his eyes, like that. Then his senses sounded, and in one quick move, knocked the sword to the ground and tripped Isabella over. Trying to murder me, eh? You killed Mom, you killed Dad, and you don't deserve to live! Isabella! You ready for some Elvish? Imak nak yechak erwi nameket dine heshraf. Translated, it's come on, they were mean and harsh. While the bickering went on, nobody saw Tyson sneak some cheese out of Mathiyus' pack. Good man. Well, he's half elf, half man. Yeah, they're all half elf, half men, by the way. Bella, why do you think you're still alive? Isabella was struck. She didn't know what to say. Mathiyus sat down next to her. Listen, Bella, began Mathiyus. Don't call me Bella. Okay, but I couldn't kill you. You're the only person that cares. Well, the other two are dead. Mathiyus looked down again. You need to settle down and just rest. I'll watch. Let my sister guard? Ouch! Mathiyus got slapped. Okay, you'll guard. Please don't slap me again. Isabella cracked her knuckles. All in every sister's blood, she smiled. The art of the slap. Thank you. Mathiyus looked up at the night sky. What is it, Matt? Oh, there's a time lapse, by the way. Well, I just was always hoping for something. What? Dad once told me everyone has their own star. I should be looking up, sorry. I've always watched for one, but no luck has come. I'm sorry. But someday, I'll get my star. Excuse me. It'll be the best star in the sky. I can't wait. I can't wait for you too, she smiled, she being Isabella. So did Mathiyus. After Tyson was asleep, after another time lapse, Mathiyus waited for Isabella to fall asleep. Her eyes drooped and were weary. Then you could hear the slight breath from her mouth. Mathiyus sat down quietly and took out the ring. Its beauty blinded Mathiyus, and he rubbed gently at its carvings. The ring whispered into his thoughts. Mathiyus. Its voice was quiet and harsh. Mathiyus. It read the ancient words. Mathiyus's mind tricked him, and he pulled the ring closer to his finger. Once it was on, he smiled. His vision was blurry, and many shadows were seen. Then Sauron himself appeared. Mathiyus! It shrieked. Mathiyus ran with all his might and tripped over a rock. Time lapse. Ow! What the heck was that? Yelled Tyson. Mathiyus appeared after the ring slipped off. Funny story, Ty, he smiled. Tyson groaned and went back into his dream. Mathiyus shrugged and pulled his blanket on. Slowly, he fell asleep. Time lapse. Later, Mathiyus woke up and stood next to Isabella. Someone's coming! John? I just spoiled it. Mathiyus was interrupted by a cry and a snap of a twig. He saw some sort of figure running away from someone. He grabbed its collar and threw it backwards. The boy had blonde and brown hair with nose freckles. Tell me your name. No! It's, come on! It's John Monnick! He said, sounding scared. John Monnick? What are you? Huh? What species? An elf! I'm an elf, said John. Lothlorien leaves. Another elf, said Mathiyus to Tyson and Isabella. John, where do you come from? I come from Mirkwood. I live with the wood elves, answered the young elf nervously. Oh, nervously. I live with the wood elves. There we go. That's better. We should kill him! Sorry. We should kill him, said Mathiyus, drawing his sword. No! Shouted Isabella, grabbing Mathiyus' hand. He is unarmed and little like a hobbit babe. Yeah, wait, hey, I'm not that small. I'm just a couple inches under 6 feet, shouted John. What kind of a brute is he? Said Tyson. I think... Tyson, shut up, said Isabella. Some lady. Tyson, listen to Isabella, shouted Mathiyus. I better get going, said John nervously. Mathiyus grabbed John again and pulled him back slowly. He's right. Come on, said Mathiyus. I just lost my place, sorry. Oh, here we go. The four walked hundreds of miles to a small village called Cadeau. There they met a man who looked 50 or 60 years old. Well, hi ye! What you doing here in Cadeau? Said the man. He looked like a merchant. Please, sir, we wish to stay at the inn, said Mathiyus to the bearded man. You're in for it now. They got a big surprise inside for any newcomers, he said. Good luck, my friends, and happy wishes, said the man as the four headed towards the inn. Inside there was a bar where men gambled and were drinking and having... Okay, let me read this again, the way it's written. Inside there was a bar where men gambled and were drinking and having a good time. The four stayed in an average room for 4. They loved it in there. It was so warm. They could eat big meals and just laugh and laugh all night. Boy, was it great. I'm so sorry. Chapter 3. The Inn. They had, for once, a good night's sleep. Isabella woke in the night to see Mathiyus awake and just watching. Mathiyus, are you okay? Said Isabella, still part asleep. Just fine. Go back to bed, said Mathiyus, emotionless. Don't you sleep? Every 3 or 4 days, started Mathiyus. I don't really need it. Well, okay. Good night, said Isabella, drifting slowly to sleep. Good night, said Mathiyus, looking back at the door. The moon shone through the window and was very bright. Mathiyus was alone again. It was a beautiful sight seeing the moon and a million stars about. He smiled and looked at lights flickering out. They were youngsters' night lights. Okay, why are they going off? He looked down to the town road. He watched as the townspeople rushed and scurried through the streets. Wait! Those are Black Riders! Quickly, Mathiyus woke up the others. Isabella, Tyson, John, wake up! Mathiyus sounded like a cat, dying. What? Shouted Isabella, Tyson, and John all at once. Black Riders! Nazgul! Stop wasting time! Shouted Isabella. Come on! Everyone stay calm! Let's go! Said Tyson. Hello, who are you? Was the horrible sound outside the room. The manager was dead, and the Nazgul were at the door. Everyone, up the attic stairs, quick! Everyone, up the attic stairs, quick! Harshly whispered Tyson. Isabella helped John up the stairs, then herself as well. Tyson turned to Mathiyus. Are you going? No, I'm not, said Mathiyus. The Nazgul were breaking in. The wrong kind of breaking. They were car breaking in, apparently. But, go! I'll keep them company. Go! Shouted Mathiyus to Tyson. Okay, good luck. Cuz... said Tyson as he boarded the attic door shut. Mathiyus looked at what he was about to face. I hope I make it, Mathiyus said in thought. He charged at the door. It was demolished before he was 3 feet away. The Nazgul and Mathiyus fought for what seemed like, to the 3 in the attic, hours. The 3 waited for Mathiyus. Then a last cry was heard and the fighting stopped. The attic door suddenly opened and Mathiyus approached the attic floor. He was sweating and his left arm was cut. Tyson and John cheered. Yay! But were shocked. Mathiyus fell to the floor. He was out cold. It had been hours since the fighting, and Mathiyus awoke to a warm fire and a bandaged arm. Excuse me. Isabella was sitting right next to him. John and Tyson were playing poker. Mathiyus heard shouts from Tyson like, "Dad, blam it, you won again!" Or, "Sahara Desert, I lost again!" "You're awake! Finally," said Isabella, looking at Mathiyus. "You okay?" They slashed, they stabbed, they screamed. "If I meet those creatures again, I'll get 'em for good." Now, you can't even step out of this here bed," chuckled Isabella. "Ha ha ha. I will, and I'll shut down those—" "Ow!" said Mathiyus. Isabella had punched his shoulder very hard. "Ty," Isabella turned away from Mathiyus. "Yeah?" "Get some biscuits from Buckhead." Buckhead? "At the counter downstairs, will ya?" "You got it." "Ma'am," spelled ma'am wrong, said Tyson, heading for the door. Soon he was gone. That is a sentence. "John, honey?" "Yes." "Get some more firewood from the storage, please." "Okie dokie," said John, walking to the storage cupboard. "Mathiyus, I'll be getting some extra pillows from downstairs. John's coming with me, okay?" "Okay." "We'll be back," Isabella said, leaving the room. Mathiyus hoped they would. Then he saw a shadow move. A little man was by his bed and raised his fist. Then his fist dropped, and Mathiyus saw blackness. Chapter 4. The Missing Recruit. Isabella returned to find the room empty. "John, where's Mathiyus?" "I don't know," he answered, rushing into the room. "Ah, here comes Tyson. He'll know." "Hey, Ty." "Yeah?" "Have you seen Mathiyus by any chance?" "Why, no, I haven't. Why?" "He's gone missing." "You don't say." The three gathered their things and rushed out of the inn. Time lapse. Mathiyus awoke in a dwarf camp. He looked to see what he thought was the head dwarf. He was no higher than a 6-year-old boy, but his beard was about 1.5 feet long. He couldn't believe he was seeing dwarves in the flesh. He had never seen a dwarf. He had heard of dwarves before and made a joke. You read, everyone? Jumping out of the story for a second, you ready to hear this joke I inserted in italics into the story? Question: what do you get when you put a dwarf and an orc together? Anyone? The answer is a dork! Ha ha! So sorry. He then saw one of the dwarves come up close to him. Then the mysterious creature started to speak in the lowest voice. I'm not going to go low. The dwarves do not talk like this in anything else. Get ready for this. "Thy prisoner is awake, thy king." "Thank you, Ginnabrick," ripping off Narnia. "Now, creature, who are ye?" "I am a human elf, can't you see?" Mathiyus made a face and pointed. "Speak better, your accent is like throwing sugar down thy throat." "I thank thee. And what is thy place?" Mathiyus changed his way of talking. It's the mines of Moria, home to the great Gimli, whose cousin died in thy terrible ambush by orcs." "And who is thou?" "My name," get ready for this dwarf name. "My name is Four Winds Ears, grandson of thy great Gimli." Four Winds Ears answered with pride. "And is thee—" "I just said it. Moria." The king was now shouting at Mathiyus. His words were heavy and strict. Why have thou taken me here?" asked Mathiyus to Four Winds Ears. "Ye have stolen thy cherry diamond," he shouted, pointing his fat, stubby finger out at Mathiyus. Well, ye can be wrong, ye know. Still, we saw ye. Just shut up, and maybe your fat mouth can fit your fat body. Cease him! Seize, not cease. Cease him! Shouted four Wind's ears. Mathiyus dove out of sight. Each dwarf was charging at him. He pulled out his sword and began slashing. Everywhere a dwarf went, they were killed by Mathiyus's powerful blade. Blood spilled out of the dead bodies of dwarves that had been hit. He killed 50 dwarves and wounded 21. Four Wind's ears tried to run, but Mathiyus slashed him. Four Wind's ears fell to the ground in pain. After about 10 minutes, Four Wind's ears was dead. Mathiyus mounted a horse and rode off. Time lapse. Outside the Prancing Pony. They were in the Prancing Pony, so they were in Bree, apparently. Or they're now in Bree. I don't know. Isabella, John, and Tyson all waited. The police were out, but gave up. I'm going to find him, shouted Isabella. You can't. It's too dangerous, shouted Tyson. Don't you remember? I was a ranger for the past 5 years. I think I'll manage. Isabella strapped her pack on. Oh, yeah, I forgot. But still, you can't go. Mathiyus, interrupted Isabella. Get off my back, Bella. I've had enough with dwarves already, groaned Mathiyus out of nowhere. Mathiyus told him the whole story of how he disappeared and escaped Four Wind's ears. If Father were here. Dad isn't here, Bella. He's gone, said Mathiyus. This is your fault, Matt, Isabella shouted angrily. Why do you bring this up all the time, really? Mathiyus shouted back. You're always thinking this is Dad's fault. It's not. It's your stupid mistakes. Bella, Dad's gone and he's not coming back, Mathiyus huffed angrily. Isabella sobbed. You need to be alone, Maddie. Come on, John. Tyson, you too, Isabella demanded. See you, cousin, said Tyson. The three walked out, leaving Mathiyus looking down and mumbling over and over. I wonder what this chapter's about. Chapter 5. No Mathiyus. The whole way to Rivendell was quiet. Quiet. There we start to go. For instance, Isabella was thinking about what Mathiyus had said. Why? He tells me this stuff over and over, and my stupid curiosity asks him again. Isabella was looking down. She said that in her head. What about Mathiyus? When will I... This is John, by the way, in his head. When will I tell Isabella? Gosh, she's beautiful. John was looking at Isabella, smiling. We left Mathiyus behind. I thought he was with us to the end. Or was that a dream? Had to have been. I was in my underwear. I'm sorry. Tyson checked if he had pants on. So, John, said Isabella, how old are you? I am 26. Why? Just asking, answered Isabella. How old are you? Asked the curious John. Not curious, curious John. I'm 26, answered Isabella. Why? Just asking. I'm 24, shouted Tyson. Did we really want to know that? Said John. Yes. No, replied John. Oh. The three were silent. Isabella? Asked John. Yes. Isabella turned. I've been wondering. Rivendell! Shouted Tyson excitedly. There it was. Rivendell. Home of the elves. Bridges scraped across a carved mountainside and water flung down into the below rivers. That's the best line in the book. Sparks of mist covered you wherever you went, and cool breezes of air slapped your face. They boarded the gates and walked on inside. The elves greeted them with happiness, and they walked into the throne room of the great Elrond. Elrond looked happy to see them. Then his guard whispered to him, "Throw them in jail. The great Lord Sauron commands it." Plot twist. "Why should I listen to Sauron?" Elrond asked. "Either that or you'll die before Middle-earth," he whispered back. "Okay. Good choice," the evil elf guard whispered back. He smiled sadly and then shouted, "Guards!" The guards rushed in. John tried to run away, but a guard tackled him. Isabella was already taken away while Tyson was busy battling the guards. He managed to get 2 out of the way, but the third sent in more guards, which knocked Tyson out and dragged him down into the dungeon. Sorry. Inside, Isabella was sitting on a bench. John was on the bed, and Tyson was thrown in onto the floor. John was terrified. For instance, John was... So sorry. For instance, John was a softie and not a big fan of fights. John looked over in the corner to see who else? Mathiyus. The chapter lied to us. Mathiyus? Yes. What are you doing here? What are you doing? What are you doing here? I got a boat ride here. When I arrived, they beat me and threw me in this dumpster. How did you get here? We were just walking in and they arrested us right away. I tried running away, but they tackled me and Isabella was taken right away. Tyson fought back. He knocked out 2, but then backups came to help. That's him over there. Tyson, yelled Mathiyus, running over to him. He's all right, but severely injured. Isabella sniffed. How are we going to get out? John stood. We'll make it. You just gotta believe that you could. You got to believe, Isabella. The more you doubt, the more you mess up. You've just gotta believe and don't doubt. Don't doubt at all. Thank you, John, she said. John could just not tell Isabella the truth. He did have a crush on her. Mom, is it lunchtime yet? Tyson, you're awake. Goodness, are you okay? I'll have some fries with that shake, please. I think he'll be okay, Isabella giggled. What's fries? Or this milkshake? Asked John. I don't know, said Mathiyus, scratching his forehead. About a week had passed, but they all had lost track. Then one morning, while being fed breakfast of bread and leftover meat, Mathiyus came up with the perfect plan. I've got it. Mathiyus, before you tell me your plan, please, why did you kill our family? Let me fix this real quick. Why did you kill our family? I've told you this many times. I couldn't hold back. Mathiyus started sobbing. I know now that it was wrong, and Dad was only teaching me a lesson on being responsible. Now he's not coming back, and I should be dead now. Hanged on the gallows of Seville in front of all those people. Isabella changed her mood of anger to empathy. I'm sorry, Mathiyus, but what you did was bad and very outlaw-like. You got to hold it, even if people make you lose it. I'm just glad I still have family. She smiled. That made Mathiyus answer back with a smile. I have never seen you smile, shouted Tyson. Mathiyus turned smiling to his cousin. Now you have a new memory. Tyson smiled back. Mathiyus had been nice for once. My plan is to break the bars. Then put a rope down in knots, Mathiyus began. I've already heard this. It's a classic, Tyson said. Wait, we'll make the guards look down the window, then run out the door while locking it. You're a genius, shouted John. I bet it will work, said Tyson. Isabella tore a piece of her Rohirrim cape. She tied it together with Mathiyus' shirt sleeve he had torn off as well. John used his hidden knife to snip a part off his cape end and ended up giving the whole cape. Tyson tore his shoulder cloth off and gave it to Isabella. She gave up her cape and the three had made a long cloth rope. The next day they tried it. Time lapse. Tyson was the only person in sight for the guards. John, Isabella, and Mathiyus all hid behind the iron door. Guards! They've escaped! The guards ran into the cell and looked down. Then Tyson kicked their heads into the bars where they got stuck. I'll fill that in the morning. Tyson laughed. Time lapse. Mathiyus hurried around the cell door. Come on! They all ran out and locked the door. Then more guards showed up. Tyson Mathiyus began to fight. John and Isabella ran down the corridor hallway. The corridor hallway. John and Isabella came up to more guards. John stood firm and looked left to see a framed sword, of course. The glass covering was the only thing keeping John away from the blade. With a quick move, John destroyed the glass and grabbed the sword. A guard charged forward, and John did too. They both yelled and swung their blades forward. John's sword knocked his around, and he stuck his blade into the guard's gut. He pulled his blood-covered sword out and hacked at the next guard. Two big guards ran at Isabella, and she paced backwards. She pulled her sword, get ready for more Elvish, Fadur Yatid, Red Death. Off her back sheath, she stabbed one in the chest while slitting the other's neck. You think that hurt? She yelled. Try getting trampled by your older sibling. Two guards stood watching John and Isabella's amazing performance. Fools! Yelled one, pulling out a whip. A green glow covered the end of it and turned out to be poison. Venom of the rattlesnake! Most poisonous thing in Middle-earth, he hissed loudly. With a quick move, the guard threw his whip far, and it connected right on target, John's forearm. Ah! Yelled the scarred John. The whip created a half-inch scar where the poison slithered in and infected his arm. Ah! John clutched her arm, and he fell to the brick ground. John! Isabella shrieked. She looked helplessly at her hurt companion. Yeah! She leapt at the guard, sword high. Her sword slid across the first one's neck and cut into the other one's side. Eat your own poison! She stuffed the poisoned whip into the guard's mouth and forced him to choke on it. Isabella breathed slowly, looking on her foes lying dead feet away. John, she said, being quieter. She turned over to her poisoned friend. John, she said, worried. John, speak to me. Isabella, he said weakly. Yes, John. It's me. She clutched his hand tight. Get out. That was a real cough, sorry. More guards will come. You must escape while you have the chance. No, not without you. Her eyes widened. Leave me, he managed to say. His eyes drooped. No, John, no, she started to sob. Don't go. Time lapse. Meanwhile, Mathiyus and Tyson were holding off guard after guard. Every time a guard fell, more came. Mathiyus' sword was drenched in elf blood. The same with Tyson's. Mathiyus was hacking at one guard when another cut a deep blow into his left leg. Mathiyus dropped his sword to grasp the pain that was felt. Save yourself! Mathiyus shouted above the commotion. No! Tyson lunged at the guards and knocked a big huddle of them down before getting to the injured Mathiyus. Tyson was locked with one when a guard behind him swung his arm around. The arm pulled Tyson back by the neck. He was in a headlock. Get out! Mathiyus pulled against the force of his neck. Not without you! Mathiyus let go of his hurt leg. Save yourself! Tyson was pulled down the stairs by one strong elf guard. No! Mathiyus yelled, running towards them. More guards showed up at the stair entrance. Mathiyus knew he had to follow Tyson's word and get out. He picked up his motionless sword and shut it down his sheath. Motionless sword and shut it down his sheath. Yeah. Time lapse. Mathiyus ran down the brick hallway looking for his other companions. He found John and Isabella and together at the end of... He found John and Isabella and together at the end of the corridor. John's eyes were closed and his body was shaken. What happened? Said Mathiyus, kneeling down. He's been poisoned. One of the guards got rattler poison inside his arm. Isabella put her hand on John's forehead. It was getting very cold. We go to get him to Elrond. Even though he threw you in jail, he still go to heart for the sick. Mathiyus tossed John over and onto his shoulder and followed Isabella to the throne of Elrond. Once they blasted through the door, they saw the evil guard stick his sword into Elrond's body. Elrond! Yelled Mathiyus. Elrond choked for a second. They fell helplessly to the floor. Then... No! Elrond! Mathiyus felt his... Get ready for this. Mathiyus felt his mind dragon slip through the walls and stab him with the feeling of revenge. Mathiyus pulled his sword back out of its sheath and dropped John down onto a chair. He raised his mighty blade and cut the evil elf's head clear off his body. Mathiyus made an angry grin as the evil elf fell lazily to the floor. Mathiyus huffed out breath very hard for a while, and his eyes were cherry red. Can't always get what you want. His breath settled down, and his eyes turned back to its normal color. He lifted his blood-covered sword and sighed. Not again! He shook his head back and forth. He took off his pack and pulled out a piece of cloth he had ripped earlier. He slid the cloth down the sword blade again and again until blood was no more seen. We must go, he said to Isabella. What about Ty? Ty is gone, Mathiyus looked down. Oh no! Isabella sniffed. A tear rolled down Mathiyus's pale cheek. We must go. Mathiyus put his sword back in its sheath and lifted his pack over his shoulders. Isabella started out while Mathiyus got John up onto his shoulder. Mathiyus quickly ran with Isabella out of the magnificent city without looking back. Just a second. Oh. Ow. Sorry, time lapse. When they were out of Rivendell area, Mathiyus stopped to see a small speck of sparkle. He bent down and picked up the mysterious object. The object was wooden with a bunch of small knives inside it. It was a pocket knife. The initials labeled on the back were TJT. The initial, get ready for this middle name. The initials stood for Tyson Jones Tate. Mathiyus almost cried. He had lost his cousin to a bunch of evil 11 guards. 11. John gave a silent groan and coughed. Mathiyus put John down on a small lot of grass. John! Isabella gasped. Get some clovers. How many leaves? She asked. 2. Get them along with a hard stick. Mathiyus put a wet leaf over John's cold forehead. He started shaking and breathing hard. Isabella gathered some 2-leaf clovers and used a hard-covered stick to grind the plant part into bits of flakes and juice. She swept the juices and flakes of clover into a wooden bowl from her pack. She grinded them even more and added some water from her canteen. He, supposed to be she, ended up with a large bowl of green liquid. Mathiyus yelled. Isabella held the clover juice steadily and waited for Mathiyus. Mathiyus ripped open John's sleeve and Isabella handed him the juice. He poured the liquid slowly onto John's poison cut. John started breathing very fast as the pain grew and grew. After the bowl was empty, Mathiyus put it down and ripped off another cloth of his sleeve, whatever is left of his sleeve at this point. He tied it around John's cut and stood back. Time lapse. What seemed like hours passed and John hadn't spoken a bit. Isabella started to go to sleep as the sun hid behind the western hills. Mathiyus stayed wide and awake, ready for John. Then, a miracle happened. John started coughing and opened his eyes very slowly. John? Mathiyus looked amazed. Matt? Groaned John. John! Mathiyus smiled. Isabella woke up with a startle. What? Mathiyus pointed to John. John! Yelled Isabella happily. John smiled. I fought hard for life. I guess I'm a little stubborn. He laughed weakly. John! Mathiyus and Isabella couldn't stop laughing. Ha 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 ha. When John grew back time-lapses full strength, they began their journey to Moria again. Mathiyus walked ahead as usual, but was for once silent. And this is in his head. Tyson, he gave his life for me to get out. He's not an annoying pest. He's a brave cousin that saved my life. Mathiyus had a tear run down his cheek. Oh, that's sweat. When the gates were in view, Mathiyus sighed with relief. He had come a long way from that little town of Seville. Mathiyus and the other two stopped in front of the gates where rocks piled up and down in the entrance, like, you know, Lord of the Rings. Then weird sound was heard and an arrow hit a dead tree a yard away. That's pretty close. They all gasped. Mathiyus pulled out his sword. John got his new sword, and while Isabella pulled out her blade, the figure slid down to the ground with its head pointed down. Hi, guys! They couldn't believe their eyes. Who is it? It was Tyson! Tyson, you're alive! Hey, John, Tyson is alive! John? John had fainted. Ty! Isabella laughed loudly. Ha 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 ha! She hugged her lost cousin and laughed again. Ha 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 ha! Mathiyus hugged Tyson too. You're back, Mathiyus said happily. Yep, he smiled. Here, he handed him the pocket knife. Thanks, he smiled again. The fellowship's together again, shouted Isabella. Well, that's enough for one adventure for me, said Tyson. Everyone laughed. Ha 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 ha. Yes, indeed, Tyson, said Mathiyus. Yes, indeed. Okay. Chapter 6, The Mines of Moria. They boarded the gates. Sure enough, the gates were piled up with rocks. Crud! Now how do we get in? Asked Tyson. Easy. Blow it up. Mathiyus punched the rocks. Nothing happened. It's still. John paused. The rocks tumbled down like Sauron's eye when the first ring was destroyed. Come on, guys, let's go, shouted Mathiyus. And when Mathiyus said to do something, it was obeyed. After an hour of walking, someone actually spoke up. How long, said Tyson, sounding tired. 3 days' walk, started Mathiyus. What if we run? Tyson asked. Please shut up, shouted Mathiyus. Oh, crap. Everyone knew what had happening. It was the orc drum. Do, 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 do. Sorry. The same drums that beat when the Fellowship of the Ring came through here, shouted John. They all hurried away into the domain where the ruins were covered with ivy and other weeds. They ran straight out of the domain and headed towards the opening. Mathiyus stopped. What are you doing? Shouted Tyson. Go! I'll handle these orcs. Go! Tyson ran down the hall until he was with John and Isabella. Sorry. They were up on a balcony. Tyson shot an arrow and it hit an orc in the back and killed it. Yes! Tyson said in his victory cheer. Finally, light was shining through an open door. Go! Shouted Tyson. Tyson Jones, come back! Shouted Isabella. It was too late. Tyson was already in the door. When he looked at Mathiyus, he saw he was wounded in the leg. Again. Tyson lost control. Arrgh! Tyson shot arrows like a maniac. He killed all the orcs around Mathiyus. Mathiyus! He ran down to him. Come on, Maddie, come on! Mathiyus grabbed Tyson's neck. Don't call me Matt T, he shouted. Tyson helped Mathiyus out of the mines and into the light. Mathiyus, Isabella ran over. Mathiyus Graham Tate, you've done it again. How many times do you get hurt? After John bandaged up the leg, Mathiyus was walking like he just woke up. Like that. They walked and walked until the blue lights of Lothlorien were bright and light. The longest chapter of the book, wasn't it? Chapter 7, Lothlorien. Our friends approached the trees of the Elven city Lothlorien, where the ancient mirror of Galadriel is. Mathiyus yelled out, Elves of Lothlorien of Middle-earth, we come in peace. There was movement and more movement. It's the worst thing I've ever written. Before anyone could notice, there was an army of about 2,000 elves surrounding them. Of course, these elves were hidden among the trees that surrounded the tiny lot of grass Mathiyus, Tyson, John, and Isabella were standing. One of the elves marched up to Mathiyus. It is great to see you again, he and Mathiyus hugged. Ha 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 ha. We were worried about you. You were gone nearly a year. You know these guys? Whispered Tyson. I spent 5 of my 10 years living here. 10 years. I left about a year ago to find money and food for myself. Mathiyus whispered back. 'Tis the night of great dance, shouted the elf. Tyson, who was 6 feet high, noticed this elf was about a head taller than him. Elves of Lothlorien, it gives me great pleasure to announce that our brother, Mathiyus, with 1 T, Tate the Second, has returned to our camp. Every elf in the village cheered. Mathiyus, would you speak? Of course, answered Mathiyus. Hello, everyone. It's me, Mathiyus. I'd like to thank Elessar for announcing my arrival. I'd like to thank my sister Isabella for her kindness. For his bravery, my cousin Tyson. And how could I forget John Monnick, who, in the time of grief, encouraged us to keep on keeping on. Another cheer was roared through the village. Mathiyus, friends and people of Lothlorien, I would like to say that the ring is on its way. The village was going wild, and cheering was endless. Tyson foolishly spoke up. Where's the food? Over here, shouted a distant voice. Okay, yes, Tyson pumped his fists. That night, Mathiyus was asleep. For once, he could sleep. He hadn't slept for 3 whole days. Isabella was wide awake, for she was very happy here. John was taking an elven trivia with the elders and winning. Tyson was in a house slurping up food. Good man. In Mathiyus' thoughts, this was truly a lovely place to be again. I'm going to pause. So for those of you listening, get ready for I'm going to guess it's about 15 lines, a love scene. So I'm going to take 1 second to just click on a few things, making sure it's all set up for the next chapter, as I collect my thoughts and get ready to read this. Here we go. It was around midnight. John took Isabella out to a high balcony. Isabella, this is the great balcony they told me about. Wow, she looked down at the city. Isn't it great? Yes, she smiled. Yes, it is. They both started to blush. Is? Yes. What? Never mind. You know what? She asked. I've, I've got a crush on someone. John stood up. Who? Oh, an elf. She pulled John back down. A very handsome elf boy. Who is he? Let me talk to him. You already know him. I do? He was interrupted. Isabella's lips touched his and a kiss formed. Oh, I need that. I'm really sorry. I'm trying to push through. I'm trying. John, he's the smartest person around and he doesn't. John looked at her. Me? Yes, John. She smiled. They kissed again. Then John put his arm around her. She looked up at the stars. What? John smiled, asked smiling. Matt's still looking for his star. She smiled. Don't worry, said John. He'll find it. They both smiled and looked at the midnight sky. Oh, that is the cringiest thing in this whole book, probably. It might get worse, though. I think there's another scene. Time lapse. Whew. Okay. The next morning, Mathiyus woke up to a sound of orcs. Shh, they'll see us, whispered Alesser sitting next to Mathiyus's bed. Tyson and John are next door. Isabella's in my house with my wife. These orcs passed through just an hour ago. Excuse me. Many are returning to Mordor. We have fled to the trees, for there are 15,000 orcs passing by. Then we have to do something. Shh! They'll hear, whispered Alesser. Okay, so we just wait, right? Indeed we do. The orcs took another hour to entirely pass through. Mathiyus and other elves jumped down from the tree houses and started a regular day. Tyson! Tyson! Over here! Shouted Mathiyus. Tyson looked over. He ran to Mathiyus. Yes, cuz? Have you seen John or Isabella? Nope. Hobbit's feet. They're wrong use of there, missing. Either that or in the village somewhere. Sure enough, John and Isabella were at the falls on the edge of the village. Nice morning, huh? Oh, here we go. Nice morning, huh? Yes, it is, John. Answered Isabella. Isabella? Said John, holding her hands. Yes? I have to tell you something. Something important. Yes, what is it, John? It's, John. Isabella looked at his eyes. Never mind. Isabella looked into John's eyes. There is something wrong, isn't there? Yes. What is it? Nothing. John walked away. He just walks away. Time lapse. Tyson and Mathiyus found John walking down the road, shoulders slumped. John! 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 Over here! They both shouted. John ignored. John! 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 Still he ignored. Forget him, Tyson. He's just ignoring us. Let's go. They both walked until they found a road. Then the most shocking noise was heard. A scream. Tyson ran alongside Mathiyus. When they reached the falls trail, they found footprints with a note on the rocks. Mathiyus read it. Here we go. You ready for the note? Your friend, Isabella, is gone. Never expect to see her again. Signed, Orc, Regiment 1, Mordor. Orc, Regiment 1, Mordor. Okay. Gone? Wait, there's a code. Get ready for this code, everyone. You ready? The code read S. Okay, I'm going to read it as it's written. S space HEI space SGON space ETOM space ORD space OR. Get ready for this. Get ready to crack this code. Mathiyus put some letters together and it read, "She is gone to Mordor." Where else would they have taken her? But it's this. I know where she is. Mathiyus ran towards town. Mathiyus, wait! Tyson shouted, running behind. In town, Mathiyus grabbed food, water, and his sword. Tyson finally caught up. You're not serious, are you? I have to go. She's my own sister, and family looks out for one another, even though he killed his parents. Mathiyus stormed towards the road. No, if you're going, I'm going. No, Tyson, not this time. Come on, Mathiyus. Me and John can help you. Okay, if you have to. Yes. Tyson ran like a bullet to John. Guess what, John? We're going on a perilous journey to Mordor to save Isabella from Sauron and millions of orcs, and we might die trying. Let's go. But, come on, let's go. For Isabella, yelled John. Chapter 8. The Dead Marshes. The Dead Marshes. It had been 2 days on the Great River. Mathiyus, John, and Tyson were in canoes. Mathiyus and John were in one canoe. Tyson in the other with their supplies, as if we needed to know all that. When they reached the Fort of Bruin, I think I pronounced that right, they made camp. That's an actual location, I believe. Mathiyus, we must watch out. This is where the Fellowship of the Ring was split up. An arrow shot Boromir. John, you may know your history, but those orcs are dead and more than 50,000 orcs roaming Mordor at this very minute, Mathiyus said. 50,000? Shouted Tyson. He sounded like a maniac. Yep, said John. Tyson, you have to know... Tyson had fainted. Come on, we better get a good sleep. Mathiyus lay down but arose again. Sorry, it's my turn to watch. John, Ty, go to bed. Good night, John yawned. In an instant, he was sound asleep. Tomorrow's another day. Tyson was asleep. Mathiyus was alone in his thoughts. Yes, Tyson. Tomorrow's another day, he said to himself. Time lapse. The next day, Tyson awoke very refreshed. Tyson, we must go! Mathiyus threw Tyson into his canoe. John was in the other canoe. Let's go! Mathiyus shouted to John. The end of the day was near. They found themselves in the Dead Marshes. There they camped, but no fire. Why no fire? Asked Tyson. Because the Nazgul will find us and destroy us, said John. John and Tyson were asleep while Mathiyus watched. Another day was near. They walked for hours, getting closer every step to Mordor. Guys, Tyson shouted. Little did Tyson know these marshes could pull you into a trap. Tyson ran up to Mathiyus but fell into one of the graves. Does this sound familiar? Lapse. Tyson looked around and saw dead faces of ghosts around him. He tried getting out, but the hands were gripping his cloak. We have another prisoner, laughed one ghost. Tyson struggled to get out but was pulled in through a portal. A portal. You went into a portal. I forgot about that. Time lapse. Tyson! Mathiyus ran over and searched the water. Ty's gone, he said to John. It's up to us now. Where'd he go? Mordor. He's probably where Isabella is. Mathiyus and John ran until Mathiyus pulled them behind rocks. John, we must go around to Minas Morgul. It's the only way. Mathiyus and John began a journey to Gondor. Back in Lothlorien, time-lapse, Elessar was pacing back and forth. His maids were making his elvish tea, and he didn't like to wait. Hurry up, ladies! Hold your horses, Mr. Eager McBeaver! The tea was brought, and Elessar's wife... Iwan. Iwan, A-Y-W-A-N, Iwan came in and sipped it. Iwan. Okay. Iwan. What are we going to do? Asked Lesser, sipping his tea. Green mint. Lesser, Mathiyus has disappeared somewhere near Mordor, and you yell at your maids to get a tiny cup of tea. Green mint tea? Whatever. Hun, what would you do if an almost brother or sister leaves somewhere and you are stuck somewhere else? You're not stuck. Help Mathiyus! You can help him get Isabella out of Mordor. Yes, let's get the troops ready. Mathiyus needs help. Help! Yelled a distant elf. It was a lookout. Orcs! An arrow pierced his chest. Soldiers, defend Lothlorien! Yelled a lesser, drawing his sword. Get ready for this. Retaf Driaus, which means father sword. Oh my. A lesser slid down the vine by his window and attacked the orcs. His blade cut down the first two, then he went for the next two. A lesser's blade was too powerful for any orc to handle. Well, almost any orc. A tall, leather-hard orc stepped on the entering steps of Lothlorien. Leather clothes wound around his body, and a sword sheath hung from an iron belt. The sword was twice the lesser's sword side, and it said... dead meat. When you looked at it... The orc had some chains over his chest and a pointed copper helmet. This was the leader orc. It raised its sword and ran towards a lesser. A lesser didn't panic and struck the sword coming at his face. The orc leader snarled. It swung another time and a lesser blocked it. Go back to the abyss! Shouted a lesser. Rah! The orc screamed. A lesser blocked two more blows and returned one to knock the orc over. He held the point to his throat. Let the demons of the abyss and beyond carry you and your master far within. And a lesser dug the blade point into the orc's throat. He was dead. A lesser pulled his elven blade out. A lesser pulled his 11 blade out and saw time to go slow. His elves drove the orcs out. A lesser smiled, and then he stood up with time reaching back to reality. Mathiyus needs help, he said. We must get Rohan! A lesser was going to war. I wonder what this chapter's about. Chapter 9, Reunion of the Cousins. Jon and Mathiyus began a journey through Gondor's province Ithilien. That is right, it is called Ithilien. They were planning on going through Minas Morgul to get into Mordor. They came to the path. That leads to the strong fortress of Minas Morgul. They walked down it, cautious and weapons at ready. Mathiyus then saw the winding stairs. That was the path into Gorgoroth. Kind of true. Mathiyus let Jon go first while he stayed behind. Mathiyus then took his role and started the half-mile climb. Higher and higher the stairs rose, and Jon was getting tired. I don't understand how... Okay. Then one of the pots hanging on Jon's pack fell. Bang! Ow! Jon! Yeah, your stupid pot hit me in the forehead. Sorry. Mathiyus raged with anger. Threw it back up, it fell back, and hit him in the face. Bang! Ow! Slapstick. Time lapse. Isabella yanked and pulled at the chains she bore. It was no use. They were made of pure iron steel. She huffed at a guard. Ignorant fool. You son of a brute. Let me out of here. The guard laughed. Nobody's ever escaped Baldur's dungeon. It's indestructible. He laughed again. Isabella cursed the orc out loud. When my Mathiyus and John hear about this, oh, you're gonna wish we were never born. I swear this is we're close to the end, I think. Time lapse. Mathiyus and John were halfway up the stairs. John slipped time after time, but still held out. John's pots kept falling onto Mathiyus. Then the last pot fell. John! Yelled Mathiyus. He grabbed the pot and tore it in half. He has the strength to tear an iron pot in half. They boarded the top of the stairs. A tunnel wound through the top of the mountain. John shrugged. Or no, he shrugged, sorry. Let's go in. No! Yelled Mathiyus, pulling him back. Sorry. Shelob lurks around in there and barks for meat every day. Didn't you read the pastime scrolls? What an ignorant boob I am! Exclaimed John. Of course, this is the dreaded Shelob's lair. Or Shelob, either one. Duh, yelled Mathiyus. John waited for Mathiyus' decision. Finally he spoke. We're going in! Okay. John pulled out his dagger and huffed. Yeah! John raised his blade. For Gondor and Middle-earth! Why for Gondor? Whatever. They put their blades together and went into the cave. They huddled close and stepped around the skulls of past victims. The web strung from wall to wall and gave off a blue glow. It was damp and stuffy in the tunnel. Mathiyus stumbled across something. 2 spider eggs were laying in pieces in front of them. She had young ones, Mathiyus yelled through his mind. Then a spider shriek was heard. Shelob and her babies were coming. Quick, through the tunnel, yelled the worried Mathiyus. They ran, not knowing where to go. Then 2 cat-sized spiders leapt in front of them. They shrieked and shot web at them. Mathiyus twisted his blade and cut down the web. Then Shelob appeared. She struck them with her stinger and missed by a mile. Quick, get out! They all sprinted toward the entrance with a giant breath. Shelob got near and captured John in a cocoon of web. Mathiyus, help! He yelled. Mathiyus turned. Mathiyus raised his sword and struck Shelob inches away from the tied-up John. Shelob screamed weakly and fell, and then the great giant spider was dead. Her babies were angry and leapt at Mathiyus. With 2 quick slashes, Mathiyus cut both of them in half. He cut down John, and they ran out of the cursed tunnel. Mathiyus and John skidded down the rock stairs back toward Gondor. Okay, they basically went back. Time lapse. Get ready for this little cutscene. In North Lothlorien, which is a province, Mathiyus and John walked farther on. Get them! Charge! Yelled 2 voices. Time lapse. That's the whole scene. Yep. Little did the 2 know that guards surrounded them. Now we're back in the scene. The guards took them to Minas Tirith, Gondor's capital city. I spelled capital wrong. There they stood in front of Gondor's own king, Mathiyus II. Okay, to clarify, cousin, spelled with 2 T's. I'm going to call him the king. Okay? Okay. What brings you to here? His voice was jolly, sorry. What brings you to here? That's creepy. Please, I'm Mathiyus Tate II, said Mathiyus. Did you say Tate? He asked. Yes, my father was Mathiyus I, who was brother of Mathiyus I, son of Aragorn, king of Gondor. Mathiyus I was my father, the other Mathiyus I. Welcome, cousin Mathiyus. He ran down and hugged Mathiyus. I have looked for you for years. Mathiyus smiled. This truly was his cousin. Where is your sister? Orcs kidnapped her. She's in Mordor with my cousin Tyson Tate. Your other cousin. We must do something, shouted brave John. She is not only kin of Mathiyus Tyson, but I love her, and she needs to be safe. Now, King Mathiyus, you must go and get her, for she will be killed if we don't save her. We must attack. Brave words, young elf, but you must see we are like a pebble, and Mordor a mountain. We have 15,000 at least. Sauron has close to 350,000 orcs under his command. We'll die trying. It's either we get Tyson at Isabella or we perish and fail, but we still fought to the end. And we're going to the end. I agree, the king smiled. Get ready for the name of his captain of the guard. Cole! Cole! Get my armies. We have to make a surprise attack. John cheered. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's get ready for war! Almost done. Starting to get a little teary-eyed that I'm getting through this. Chapter 10, Battle at the Gates. I wonder what this chapter is about. King and Mathiyus were in the sighting of the gates of Mordor. Mathiyus turned. Till death, he put his face guard down. Orcs of Mordor and Sauron himself, come out and show your... Come out and show your ugly face of stupidity. That's the greatest insult I've ever heard. Your ugly face of stupidity. An orc, oh, now we're in Mordor, no time lapse or anything. And an orc ran to Sauron. My lord, we have company. Get ready for war. Get your troops. So I guess Sauron's in physical form again, like an actual body. His voice was low and mean. The scene in front of Mordor was frightful. Thousands of orcs ran out and surrounded them. Steady, man, steady! King Mathiyus shouted. All of a sudden, the other Mathiyus shouted, Charge! Then all of the men charged forward. They yelled and ran straight at the orcs at the open gate. The fight began. Men and orc were slashed and stabbed. Then an arrow hit an orc on Mathiyus. He looked to see Elessar. Elessar had a huge army of elves and men from Rohan. Charge! Shouted Elessar. See it, Tom! Which is Mathiyus spelled backwards. All the elves and men ran and killed orcs in their way. Mathiyus cheered. Then another hero hit... Here we go. Then another arrow hit the ground and down slid Tyson. How did you... Escaped? I killed the guards and escaped. Isabella is safe inside the guards' quarters. I just thought I should join the party. Well, you better watch yourself. Mathiyus killed an orc. The orcs ran back into Mordor. Then King Mathiyus charged his men into Mordor. They killed every last orc that was by them. Tyson, move your group east. Tyson nodded. Then... thought they killed all of them, but... Then the most terrible thing happened. Tyson was running and an orc stabbed him in the side. Tyson fell down unconscious. Tyson! Mathiyus ran towards him, slashing every orc. He stopped and looked at Tyson. Stay here, Ty, like he's going anywhere. Mathiyus ran and charged more towards the south. Mathiyus charged at Sauron's human form and knocked out every man in his way. Orc. Sauron bore a long steel sword and a mace in his other hand. Mathiyus pulled up his sword and began. Sauron threw some quick slashes at Mathiyus. Mathiyus blocked one and ducked away from the other. Then Sauron struck again. His mace knocked Mathiyus a yard back. I think it's a mason chain. Mathiyus grew angry and threw a dagger at Sauron. The dagger hit Sauron's leg and made him fall. Mathiyus didn't have any time to lose. Mathiyus got his grip and ran the 3-mile run to Mount Doom. Sauron screamed at Mathiyus and pulled the dagger out. Mathiyus was 2 miles away. Giant balls of lava shot from Mount Doom and rolled toward Mathiyus. Mathiyus dodged every rock that was toward him. Mathiyus was 1 mile away. Sauron threw bolts of lightning and screamed even louder at Mathiyus. The ring was pulled off Mathiyus' chain and nearly fell out of Mathiyus' grip. The ring spoke silently to Mathiyus' mind. It told him to stop. Mathiyus looked greedily at the ring and slowed down. Then his father's words came back to him. This ring must be destroyed. Do not follow the ring's words. Mathiyus' mind then fought the mind trick, and soon he was running again, up the rocky slope as boulders rolled down, ready to knock him over like bowling pins. The slope got steeper, but Mathiyus' feet kept on going until the doorway was in sight. He ran up closer and closer to the entrance at full speed. Sauron screeched and shot beams of golden red light at the mountainside. The beams hit the rock slope where Mathiyus was, and he started to fall. His hands were digging into the rocks, trying to grab on. Once again, shots of his past life, the journey, and his friends were floating around his head. Then he stopped. His hand dug into the side of the mountain, and he started climbing again. Sauron again shot beams, but Mathiyus was ready. With all his might, Mathiyus started dodging the beams, one after the other, until he noticed one coming right at him. The image of his father, his uncle Mathiyus the First, and Aragorn were in his thoughts and were controlling him. Mathiyus' eyes started glowing bright blue, and his body was rising. With... What is happening? With all of his power, Mathiyus shot a powerful amount of energy at the beam and destroyed it without a trace. His eyes beamed down and he realized what he had done. Time was running out and he started another run up the mountain. Finally, his feet planted themselves on the platform. Mathiyus yanked the ring off his finger. Now it's on his finger. It looked straight down. The magma inside was causing him to sweat, like me, and he wiped it off using his arm. Okay. Mathiyus gripped the ring and pitched it into the fire. The magma started rising, and Mathiyus didn't budge, knowing his forefathers were with him. Time lapse. So apparently he can levitate and shoot beams of blue energy. It's the Avatar thing. Sauron's screech roared through the whole country. The destruction of Sauron was fierce, and happiness filled the hearts of the soldiers. The thoughts and eyes of many went to small-sized John Monarch, the bravest elf ever, besides Legolas. Cole looked at the awesome sight and threw off his battle helmet with all his heart. He yelled, "Furry!" His hands were high in the air as he danced in joyfulness. The wounded Tyson opened his eyes to see the tower fall. He laughed. He needs to see an eye doctor. That doesn't make any sense. Then a group of soldiers came and helped him up. "Sir, are you all right?" one of them answered. Tyson looked at the fallen stronghold. "Now, I am." John wandered through the ash, dust, and smoke, stepping over dead bodies of orc elfin men. He cupped his hands and yelled, "Mathiyus!" He listened. "Mathiyus!" Time lapse. Back in the volcano, nothing was left except for rock, ash, and soil. John ran up to it and looked sadly. "No, oh no, no!" he yelled. Then a glow from inside struck away the rock. Out came Mathiyus, covered in dust. "A little dusty," he remarked. Time lapse. On the way back, Mathiyus remembered the help from his father. He looked up and closed his eyes. "Thank you, Father." He could sense his father's happy tone and smile. He smiled back. His dad had gone... This makes it all better. His dad had gone hard because Mathiyus didn't take destroying the ring seriously. Mathiyus raised his sword and thanked him again and headed back to Minas Tirith. Chapter 11. The war is over? There was a gigantic party. Mathiyus honored Tyson, John, Isabella, and Mathiyus all, so the king did. Meat, fruit, potatoes, bread, scones, jams, sauces, pies, cakes, and spice bread were served, and some women cooks had to use a broom to keep Tyson away. Tyson sat alone on the front wall with a bandaged side. He smiled, looking down the horizon. The colors of purple, dark blue, pink, orange, and red were shining against the clouds. John walked up the stairs to him. "Ty, where have you been? Sitting here?" Tyson nodded. "I just wanted to be alone a while." Why don't you come and join us with the party? No, thanks, he said. You know, they have scones and jam. Ty jumped up. Well, that changes everything. And he hurried down to the dinning hall. The dinning hall. John smiled and shook his head, following. Time lapse. Mathiyus looked at the people dancing, singing, and enjoying food and beverages. This was a happy time, but he couldn't feel very happy. He walked to the edge of the deck and looked over the ridge and inhaled some breeze. He closed his eyes and smiled. He had done it. Then a figure walked over. Mr. Tate? Yeah? We have another mission for you. Time lapse. I'm sorry. Just checking. Okay. Tyson found Mathiyus packing his stuff up in his chamber. What are you doing? I have another job to do, he said, answering. Then I'm coming. No, Ty. Not you. Matt, you always say, no you can't, or I'm alone, but you always end up in trouble. This time, I'm making the choice, and I'm coming. You have a very big mouth, Mathiyus cracked his knuckles. Maybe we need to shut it. Matt, I'm coming if you like it or not, Tyson yelled. I guess. But no seconds at lunchtime, Mathiyus said. Okay, Scout's honor. Time lapse. Here we go. Meanwhile, John and Isabella were looking at the great hallway. Isabel. Yes? I have to say something. Yes? Beautiful, ain't it? He said, pointing. John, that's a brick storage. Oops, he said. He looked away from her eyes. Finally, he grabbed her hands and looked her straight in the eyes. Isabella? Yes? I've always wanted to say, I love you. You do? You do? She looked happy. Yes, I do. Then, in the light of the sun, they both kissed. So that's even shorter of a love scene. Time lapse. The sun was shone bright and clouds were invisible. Tyson and Mathiyus walked down the dirt road, looked around. It had been a day or two away from Minas Tirith. Tyson sighed. Why did we have to lose those horses? We didn't lose them. They got scared, answered Mathiyus. No, those bloody horses ran off, throwing us into the mud. We didn't lose them, convinced Mathiyus. I just got off for some air. Oh, yeah? What kind of person jumps off a horse and screams like an innocent little girl? Asked Tyson. Mathiyus punched Tyson's shoulder. Ow! Tyson grabbed his shoulder. Wimp, laughed Mathiyus, running ahead. Oh, just you wait, said Tyson, starting to run. You might be older, but I'm in better shape. Come back here, you little imp. Mathiyus ran ahead with Tyson following. Surely he wished where they were going wasn't so evil. Time lapse. So this is a whole new character. Get ready. This is in another place completely. Nick. N-I-K. Nick, son of Hilltile, ventured through the ruins of ash and embers of small fires. His once known home was now a pile of dark ash. He knew no family member had survived, and his anger blocked his mourn. He had seen the killers. And get ready for this dwarf language. It's worse than before. I'm going to kill thy underminers. And Nick ran off into the woods, trying to find these demon soldiers and get his revenge. And that is the end. Okay, so... okay, I'm going to open up some music. It's not as late as I thought it might have been, so... I'm going to turn on some music. Click off this and we can do a little Q&A if you want. I just put the slide on here just for the heck of it, so I'll turn on some music. Oh, great googly moogly. Oh. Well, I hope you liked it. So it looks like takes about 100 minutes with laughing to read through this. And trust me, I'll turn this down. Trust me, I laughed much more reading through it the first time just because, but I did my best, and it's some of the worst writing, but you gotta be proud of it. So if I'm just gonna read because there's two pages left, and it's because there's books by Jage right here. We have the sequel, Curse of the Underminer, Change 2, Curse of the Underworld, King something. Then the Next Generation, this book, A Warrior's Legacy. No, there's a apostrophe, so it looks like A Warrior's Legacy, and the fourth and final book, which spoils everything, The Wrath of Nick. Yep, we get Nick for 3 whole books. Oh, here's my 3 sports books. The Last Tight End. I read part of it too. It's really bad, but I don't think I finished it. The New Pistons. Yes, I wrote a book about a new Pistons team. I'm not even a Pistons fan. And forward, like the position in basketball, forward. So, I also have Elven Language of the 5th Age of Middle Earth. I will read through this really quick. It's not that long, but... oh, that's loud. So... come on, they were Harshaminas. Imok nok yakirk Erawi Naam Dinahashrath. Father is Retaf, mother is Ratam. Stronghold is Delorgnorts. Delognorts. John is Najou. Tyson is Nosite. Mathiyus is Suetam. Isabella is Alabasi. Alabasi. The other Mathiyus is Satamk. Minas Tirith is Hitiritis and Nims. Gondor is Rodank. Mordor is Rodromko. Rohan is Nahor. I can't read that. Eriador, the region with the Shire, is Rolderet. The Shire is Eris. Edoras is Saradek. Oryx is Scrox. Oh, Scrox. Men is Neum. Elf for elves are Fleck or Fliz. Dwarf for dwarves is Fraudich or Sarod. Fight is Tigifrok. War is Rock. Battle is Eletbi. King is Gnick. Leader is Rededwer. Tate is Itadwa. Lesar is Raselik. Cole, the most Middle-earth name ever, is Elakwug. Minas Morgul is Lagram Samin. And sword is Driaus. And of course I have the pronunciations. Mathiyus is Abelha. Tyson John Sar-on. Mathiyus LSR. Lothlorien. Mordor. Gondor. Rivendell. Bra E. Ford of Bruen, Moria, Min as, Tier F, Morgul, If Eolien. And so you get your preview of the next book that we read with Nick. I don't think that's a first edit. That might be a third edit. The books by J.R.R, the Elven language I made up, and then the pronunciations. I thought making up a language meant you just switch around English letters. It's not that easy.